Thanks for that wonderful introduction. It's always a pleasure connecting with you guys, and thanks a lot for taking the time out today. 2021 marked the 10th year anniversary for Microsoft 365, and over the last decade, Microsoft 365 picked up a lot of momentum and critical mass. It's become more complex. It's got innumerable offerings in terms of applications and services. And along with the whole rapid adoption, it also does bring about potential threats and cybersecurity challenges for organizations around the world. And trust me when I say, bad actors out there find M365 the most appealing target. And as you see or notice, organizations like CISA and FBI, they keep putting out best practices and guidelines and mitigation steps, especially around this space for cloud adoption and for cloud movement. So this is a given. Organizations are adopting M365 at a crazy scale. It does greatly help with the whole remote work movement. It does enable organizations to connect, stay connected, and access whatever critical corporate resource that they need. At the same time, it's a huge burden on the IT security teams out there to secure these deployments, at the same time, offer the services that the users need. Now, you see this whole uptick in cloud first and hybrid models happening around the world. To break it down and put things to perspective, Microsoft had about 75 million daily users back in 2020 for M365, and it almost doubled in a span of a year. 145 million daily active users, officially making Teams the most dominant workplace video and messaging app. With the whole political landscape now being a little unstable, countries around the world want businesses and organizations, especially the ones that handle critical infrastructure resource, to bolster their cybersecurity. No doubt about that. In a recently released survey and an advisory by the CISA and FBI, they urged organizations around the world to implement certain techniques and best practices. Let's see if I can incorporate few of them through today's presentation. And it's good to see that enterprises around the world have considered this as a critical juncture in the whole landscape, and they're concerned about cybersecurity, and that is one of their top priorities right now. Manage Engine, over the last 2 years, with the whole remote work movement, we've tried and enabled many organizations to go remote, go cloud, go M365 first. And in the process, we've also helped them check a lot of important security checkboxes. We've helped organizations secure their M365 instances, help them report and stay compliant. We've put together functionalities with M365 Manager Plus, our offering that can help them audit and alert when it comes to the innumerable applications that are a part of the M365 ecosystem. We want users to be able to be onboarded real quick, manage their licenses and whatnot. So, this whole M365 identity management is a big deal and is time consuming. So, we are trying to optimize it for the administrator. That's how we want to go forward. So these are certain functionalities I'm going to unpack in the next 10 minutes to help you understand where Manage Engine can help you if you're looking to set your M365 installation both secure and manage it. That's the idea. The first functionality that I'll unpack today is reporting and compliance. Now, when it comes to M365, since we've been talking about how it is continuously evolving, there are new security needs at multiple levels that also need to be addressed day in, day out. Ones that you were not aware of, ones that didn't exist yesterday but exist today. And especially in hybrid systems, IT teams are required to play an important role here, especially being knowledgeable, being able to implement an updated security patch or maybe update a tool or whatnot when it comes to infrastructure projects or applications or user security. So, this is a wide and broad scope, and you would need to be able to monitor round the clock and be able to report on any changes that happen across your target systems. It could include changes to your Azure AD environment, it could include changes to your Exchange Online or OneDrive or SharePoint or Teams. And if there are any suspicious behavior in each of these platforms, you should be on top of the situation. Being able to stay compliant requires you to be able to monitor in and out 24/7, 365 days. You need to respond to a threat ASAP if there be one. For Azure Active Directory, this could mean probably monitoring admin actions such as maybe adding a user or deleting a user account or escalating privileges, or, say, for example, unusual changes to passwords or even for that matter, policies. You would need to be able to report on these changes. You would need to be able to monitor these changes and send out maybe an automated report to an administrator. That would be helpful. For exchange environments, this could probably include auditing administrative actions on mailboxes, maybe creation of a mailbox or deletion of a mailbox, or probably in most cases, what attackers do is to leverage on forwarding rules or make policy changes to the forwarding rules. So you should be able to get reports for that too. If it's OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams, this means monitoring added, deleted, or modified sites, uploaded files, and shares probably with external users. You'd want to put a pin on that and get reports so that you can stay compliant. There are very many compliance regulations out there that keep cropping up day in, day out. CCPA, CPRA, you've got many other regulations that keep coming up, so you need to stay compliant. When it comes to M365 Manager Plus, there are about 700 plus predefined reports that are out of the box that can help you get that visibility into your M365 environment. You can schedule reports, you can get into utilization of licenses, a big challenge again. Finding out who's hogging the license, checking if they need that license or not, and optimizing cost accordingly. If there are any abnormal activities from a user standpoint, how they are engaging with your services, you can be on top of the situation by reports that are threshold based. You'd be able to get alerts to, which is the next module that I'll walk you through. So all in all, reporting with 700 plus out of the box reports that can help you stay compliant to most of the regulations out there. So that's something that you'll want to look out on. And then when it comes to auditing and alerting, there are advanced persistent threat actors out there. They want to get into your system, they want to remain in your system long term with long term access, probably compromise your enterprise and probably your entire cloud security too along the way. The cybersecurity advisory that I was pointing out a little earlier, they went out to probably give you some recommendations if you want to detect a persistent cybersecurity breach. In most cases today, as we speak, that's the way forward, advanced persistent threats. And how do you go about checking if one had happened? A lot of organizations out there don't even realize that they're victims of such attacks until it's probably few months past. So being able to implement a robust log collection and retention system for your M365 cloud environment is probably the first and foremost fundamental requirement when it comes to auditing. But Microsoft doesn't do a great job right there. The native system does lack on log retention, and it's very pertinent to what sort of licensing you are at. By default, it's 90 days, and there's how much you can do with 90 days of logs. So you'll need to look out for tools that can go beyond that. You should also not just stop right there, but be able to look for behavioral evidence, especially if there are any threat actors out there. Probably, maybe, let's say, initiating a password spray attack or using some compromised credential. You should be able to check if there are such attacks, if there are such ongoing events, and you need data, especially audit data, to be able to find out if something of that sort had happened. You need such data for doing a root cause analysis, and if you find something of that sort, you'll be able to immediately isolate those affected systems and initiate your disaster recovery plan. So fundamentally, you'll need to be able to track all of these changes, store all of these malicious activity, or track these malicious changes. And for that, you'll need log retention that goes beyond the native limitations. And M365 Manager Plus from Manage Engine can help you do that. Now, if you've deployed an hybrid model, you've got all the more challenges coming your way. You've got both your on prem system and your cloud system to be managed and audited. So, say for example, if you've got such a system, you likely delegated trust to on premise components for, let's say, critical authentication or directory objects, and you will need to be able to both monitor that as well as online. So, that is the crux of the situation right here. There are threat actors out there who'd probably want to exploit federation trust relationships. In case of account synchronizations between on prem and online, there'd be opportunities for them to exploit that. So both these vectors can grant an attacker access to administrative privileges to your cloud, and you need to be able to audit and get an alert when an event of this sort happens. And especially with the whole shadow IT going on, it's a potential or a significant risk to your M365 tenant. There's no doubt about that. Each of the new applications that your users or your shadow IT tends to access, the vulnerability or the scope at which an attacker can target your system goes up, no doubt about that. So sharing information outside the company can be controlled in M365, and not so much in applications that are used by departments or individuals. That's the challenge right here. An administrator has so much he or she can do, but when it comes to individuals and departments using IT, then there is the challenge. So IT and security teams must have insights into every application that is connected to the corporate M365 tenant. That is the benchmark requirement right here, or attackers are going to go about creating a backdoor to get into your organization. So being able to report, being able to audit, and being able to alert on these threats are quite important for an M365 solution. So that's M365 Manager Plus module in alerting for you. The next important module is the whole user lifecycle management. We are talking about onboarding and offboarding users at a crazy pace. We have corporate M365 tenants out there that need to be managed. And especially when it comes to applying best practices like, let's say, just in time access or least privilege approach, you need to stay on top of the situation right from the word go. The difficulty comes with how users are created and initially provisioned across all these services. If that is done right, in most cases, there wouldn't be very many security problems that we face these days. So, M365 Manager Plus has an entire automation module that's going to help administrators automate the onboarding process. It can be smart enough to understand which users are being onboarded, what departments are they being onboarded to, what privileges should be assigned to them, what licenses should be given to them. Such is the context and identity intelligence that powers M365 Manager Plus, helping administrators bulk onboard users, helping administrators bulk perform tasks. Say, for example, after all these users are onboarded, they've been granted the right privileges and permissions, added to the right groups, given the right licenses. You probably know that there's some sort of breach or an attack that's happening in your organization that's come to your notice. You would need to initiate a disaster recovery protocol. You'd want to probably create an organization wide password reset. That's a management operation across the organization, and you'd want that to be automated right when it hits a threshold. You can initiate such automations on the go. Maybe if you want to have MFA for all your users turned on, you'd want that to be an automation. And probably if some user turns off their MFA, you'd want them to receive a notification and automatically turn MFA on. That's another use case that you could do. So we are trying to build templates out there that can help organizations do things at scale. Especially, let's talk about enterprises where there are very many users using very many cloud applications on M365. You'd want that level of privilege, you'd want that level of control to automate these mundane routine tasks. Not just that, from a security standpoint, it does make a lot of sense, not just in offboarding and managing users or onboarding and managing users, but also particularly when it comes to offboarding. Because offboarding, as much as you think, can be the most trickiest operation out there, particularly because it requires additional tasks like, probably, let's say, converting the outgoing user's mailbox to a shared mailbox, removing them of all the licenses that they've uh, garnered over the lifetime in the organization. So it's much more challenging. It's got many more line items when it comes to the automation, and AD Manager and M365 Manager Plus does a good job at it. Now, that's the whole part about how you go about managing the users. But when you go about doing these operations at scale, you would involve very many administrators and help desk technicians in the process. And a lot of them do end up getting elevated privileges. They're required to run all of these functions, so they require these elevated privileges. But is that the right way to go about? Because in most cases, it is not. Because when it comes to how data is stored, especially these privileges and credentials, it's stored all over the place. As a result, administrators must know where exactly these permissions are stored, say, for example, for an admin for Teams or OneDrive or Exchange or Active Directory and any other service that the business is using. So, M365 does have certain limitations in getting granular, especially for large tenants. If you see, many businesses opt to write their own PowerShell scripts, and this will help them automate the whole permission management process. But with this whole scripting, there comes a lot of difficulty in terms of scaling. It requires in house experience to keep up. And if an admin needs to assign certain permissions or privileges to a single user or a service, it's going to be easy to do individually, but at scale, it's not going to work out. You would not have a track on who's got what privileges. So that is where M365 Manager Plus from Manage Engine can help you customize delegation. In fact, for that matter, help you delegate permissions and privileges to users by impersonating an admin account. That way, they don't have actual access on the M365 account, but they have on demand access for the functionalities that you want your users or your administrators or your technicians to have access. That way, you limit the number of global administrators on your M365 tenant. Microsoft does advise going up all the way up till four, but I'd say just have one global admin if that's how you want to go forward. Reduce the number as much as possible, and rather use M365 Manager Plus to delegate those privileges for your users securely. In this way, you can track who gets what privileges. If there are more privileges than they require, you can stop them. You can de-escalate if there are any permission escalations and they don't have the keys to your kingdom and you do. That's the idea with which we want to progress the segregation of duties module. And when it comes to Microsoft 365, one of the primary ways where users collaborate is through email. This is a functionality that continues to be the most challenging to deploy, the most challenging to manage, and definitely the most challenging to secure as well. Because a large portion of the cloud attacks that happened in the last quarter of 2021, they were targeted on M365 accounts, and it happened through email attacks. The attacks could have been easily classified as either distributed login attacks on hundreds of thousands of Office 365 accounts, or via a compromised consumer device, or a targeted attack on a very small number of potential high value accounts. The simple way to go about it would to be implementing best practices, one that would block emails with file attachments with file types that are commonly used by, let's say, a malware, probably by protecting against ransomware with mail flow rules. You can create mail flow rules that block out file extensions that are commonly used in a ransomware, probably even stop auto forwarding of emails, because hackers who gain access to a user's mailbox can exfiltrate the mail by configuring a mailbox automation. So you'd not want that to happen. And M365 Manager Plus can help you with these. So when it comes to deploying the functionality, you would want to also be able to go a little further than that. See if you can stop users from attaching files based on certain patterns. You don't want them to send out PII or, let's say, intellectual property. You can use patterns out there to stop users from sending out attachments of those sort. The eDiscovery module can help you do that. You can stay compliant because you wouldn't let them also send out personal information. In that case, health records or GDPR compliance does fall into your purview right there and helps you achieve that. And in terms of classic attacks like ransomware, like I mentioned, or malwares or spear phishing attacks, you would be able to potentially save your organization from a threat of that sort too. So you need these DLP rules in place, and they need to be strong. And Manage Engine M365 can help you out with that. So all in all, business data that's stored in M365 is stored in multiple junctures in multiple locations. You will need to be able to get a high level overview on what's happening in your system for you to be able to implement these security best practices that I just walked you through. It's obvious that M365 is going to be under a lot of heat way forward because of the whole adoption rage that's going on with M365. So there are multiple applications out there that need that security and that extra layer of granularity to be able to manage for administrators out there. There is an abundance of layers already to protect against and defend against maybe phishing, ransomware, and malware, and even for that matter, advanced threats. But however, as we see it right here in Manage Engine, we are working in going a little forward We understand that the last few years has been challenging, especially with the whole colonial pipeline case or the JBS Foods case, or even for that matter, the Hafnium attacks on Microsoft Exchange. We've focused our R&D and we've increased our investments in machine learning and AI that can improve security for user behavior analytics. That's the idea with which we want to go forward. The whole investment in this direction will go far beyond security. That's the vision. This will inevitably help IT teams protect against probably known and unknown problems before even they hit your end users. That's the vision with which we want to go forward and help out organizations. So, if you've got any questions with respect to M365 Manager Plus deployment, or you want to give it a shot, or you want to check out what functionality works for your organization, you can absolutely reach out to me. I've got my email ID on the screen right here, jreddy@manageengine.com. Drop me an email with your details. I'd be more than happy to help you set up your M365 installation safe and secure. You've been a lovely audience. I've tried to pack as much as information in the little time we've had today. I hope the information was useful. And thankfully, the session is recorded. If you want to replay it, you'd be able to replay it. The lovely folks at Redmond have made that possible. Thank you, guys. This has been a wonderful opportunity. You all take care and stay safe.